Welcome to the Luchinsky lecture. It's great to see everybody. I hope you enjoyed the reception, got some food and drink, and enjoyed the music. How about Manny? He was awesome. Manny Hundo. He played. He's played at a few events, and he is just spectacular. So thank you. If you would all please turn off your phones and any other electronic devices. Just a little reminder. It'd be nice if they weren't beeping. I think we have a very exciting presentation this evening, so I'm really thrilled that we have Peter Hudson with us. But I wanted to first recognize, did you, out in the reception area, did you get a chance to look at those poster boards with the pictures? Weren't they beautiful? So those were created by scholars, some of our scholars, and one of our own staff. And so if you were involved in that effort, please stand so we can recognize you. That effort was coordinated by our scholar assistant, Taylor Pust. We also want to welcome our friends at the Commonwealth campuses tonight who are watching this online. We are streaming this. And we also have Mrs. Irene Luchinsky joining us online, so she's also watching. And I would also like to welcome a friend of the Luchinsky family who is visiting with us, Frank Petrusik. Frank? So the Mark Luchinsky Memorial Lecture Series was created in 1996 to remember and honor Mark's character and contributions to life as a son, as an undergraduate, and most importantly, as a young man who held much promise in his life. Mark Allen Luchinsky passed away on January 18th, 1995 at the age of 20. He was a university scholar majoring in biochemistry and a member of the Penn State Golden Key Honor Society and the Alpha Epsilon Delta Pre-Medical Honor Society. Although he was a science student, Mark loved the study of all subjects, including the classics, poetry, history, geography, and sports. In 1996, gifts from his family and friends created an endowment to support a lecture series and has featured speakers who possess outstanding character and integrity and have a passion for lifelong learning. This lecture is presented in memory of Mark Luchinsky, a true scholar, a light that shone briefly but ever so brightly. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Last week, the Penn State community also lost a great friend and supporter of the arts when Barbara Palmer, whose gift to the university made this museum possible, died at the age of 93. We remember her this evening too and are inspired by her legacy of giving. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Hudson. It's our pleasure and honor to have with us tonight a speaker who looks at the world through a different lens, figuratively and literally. He has traveled the world to educate, influence, and capture breathtaking photos of places, people, and things in their environment. Dr. Peter Hudson, who directed the Huck Institutes of the Life Sciences for more than a decade, has been an important influence here at Penn State while focusing on issues affecting millions of people. He has helped guide students in scientific research while pioneering the field of wildlife disease ecology through research of his own. He has worked to eradicate disease and to educate people around the world. Since he received his first bird book when he was 4 years old, Dr. Hudson has been hooked on the study of biology, which is reflected in his research and his incredible collection of photos he has taken in the wild and in society. In 2014, Kish Bank honored him as Humanitarian of the Year, a testament to the scope of his work and his dedication to improving human health. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Peter Hudson.
Thank you very much indeed. That's exceptionally nice words to start. I'm going to start. Wow, great to see you. I'm so pleased to see so many students here, and I'm going to really really be talking to you, the students, because I want to reflect some of those words that Peggy told us and talk about students and learning and the future. But before I do that, I've got to do, whoops, oh yes, here we go. What I've got to do is I've got to tell you that we're going to turn your phones back on. That we're going to ask for questions, we're going to have a discussion at the end. And if you want to be involved in that, then you have to text Schreier and your question to this number, or you can go online and enter your question there. And then it's going to be moderated, so Jeff's going to bring all those questions in, and then he's going to tell me which ones I can answer. So, I have 3 general principles in life. And one of those comes from probably one of the greatest philosophers of our time, Groucho Marx. And Groucho Marx said, if you ain't having fun, you're not doing the right thing. And I think that's really true. And so, it's one of the most important things in life is to get into the groove and do what you really, really enjoy and to work on that. And I find learning very enjoyable. And so I find the two go together. I'm not going to learn anything unless I'm having fun, so they sort of go together very much hand in hand. The second principle, I think, the second principle you will be surprised about, and that is, as a man, don't wear jewellery and never wear a tie. And and the reason for that will become apparent during my lecture. So you've got to stay awake and be able to answer the questions at the end on that. The third one is really important, and that is always rub shoulders with really clever people. Spend all your time with clever people. If you're going to appoint anybody, I don't mind if it's your graduate students, your postdocs, your undergraduates, make sure you always appoint people who are much cleverer than you, and then you'll learn lots and you'll get new insight into life. That is such an important thing to do. So I'm really honoured to be here, because here you are, Shires College students, and you are the creme de creme of our university. You are the top 2%. You are the people who have this wonderful insight and you're developing that to try and see what's happening on the globe. That's one of the things I love about the Shires College, that they're trying to instill in you a global perspective. And much of what I'm going to talk about today is going to relate very much to that. The university is a simple system, Shires Honours College students. You come here, we're going to do everything we can to help you become really successful people. We want you to go out in the world. We want you to change the world. We want you to put the world to rights. We want you to be highly successful. We expect you to earn large amounts of money, and then we expect you to leave it to the university. And more obviously, the Shires Honours College as well. But this talk really isn't about me. This is about Mark Luchinsky. He was a young man, just 20 years old. He was there at the very threshold of life. He was just about to break out into the world with opportunities, and he was going to have an impact. Of course, I never met him. I didn't even know how to spell how many N's there were in Pennsylvania until 2002 when I moved. But he was clearly a person who studied everything, fascinated by everything, wanted to get these special insights into the world. He was a Shires Honours College student, so he had to be really smart. And he studied biochemistry. He had to be really, really smart to do that. So I want to talk about some of those opportunities and impacts, and the sort of impacts that you could have in the world, and some of the ways that I'm trying to change the world. In 1974, the year that Mark was born, I sat my final exams at university. It was actually on my birthday. So in the past, we used to have one exam. You go into this room, and you're in there for 3 hours, then you have a break, and then you come back for another 3 hours. That was my 21st birthday. I won't tell you what I did in the evening. But that's exactly. And then, from there, I got on the plane, and I did my first scientific exploration, and I flew to Ethiopia in Eastern Africa. There, I went down with a group of my colleagues and friends into the Danakil Desert, and there we started looking at the biodiversity that took place in this Danakil Depression. It's now called the Afar, and looking at the biodiversity of the invertebrates that lived there and how the drought was affecting them. I bumped into these gentlemen, who were then known as Danakil Warriors. They were an interesting group of people. They carried this knife, and this knife is specifically aimed for castrating males that come into their environment. They had indeed left an Italian gentleman with a very squeaky voice just a few months before I actually got there. I got caught up in the warfare. There was a war started. Haile Selassie was deposed while I was there, and multiple times got caught in crossfire in battles. And I loved every minute of it. It was just so exhilarating. I remember walking up a street in Addis Ababa and realised that we were being chased by some rebels. And I said to my friend, quick, let's go in this restaurant. It was an Italian restaurant. The guy said, what do you want? And I said, I need a table to eat spaghetti. And could we have it at the back? And in the meantime, the soldiers were coming down, the rebels were coming up, they were fighting. We saw them go up the street and shoot at each other, come down the street and shoot at each other. And then the guy came over and said, well, are you going to pay or not? So we paid our money. And I really enjoyed the time I was there. From there, I went to what was then called Zaire, and we now know it as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I went to be a research assistant to my undergraduate advisor. And we did some groundbreaking work on where the biomass of invertebrates and the ecological processes take place in a rainforest. And we were the first people to look at the vertical distribution. You still read my paper on this, of flying insects. We showed that everything really happens up in the canopy, and the processes change according to the level of the moon. That was just about one of my first papers there. It was really wonderful because I got to work with Baka, which we used to call the pygmies in those days. These are wonderful people, just only less than 5 foot high, living in the rainforest, so well adapted, such a fantastic sense of humour. I remember we were out once and they said, oh, some elephants nearby. And you go, oh, yes, there. Quiet. And they go, yes, there's some elephant poo there. And you go, yeah, pick it up. So I picked it up, looked round, looked at them. They were in hysterical laughter. It was just really fabulous. Unfortunately, there was a very series of complex events which resulted in me coming into contact with this gentleman, who is Mobutu Sese Seko, who was one of the worst despots there ever was in Africa. He was president of what was then Zaire. It was a very complicated story, but I ended up having tea with him. And I think he forgave the things we did that were wrong, like hijacking one of his aeroplanes. And I think because I said I was a zoologist, and he was very interested in zoos, and he thought I was somebody who worked in zoos. He didn't realise that I was somebody who actually studied. It's such an amazing story, this. So as I left the tea room, I met his doctor. And his doctor was called Dr. Close. It was Glenn Close's father, who was an actress, I believe. And he drove me back into Kinshasa. And I sort of was in the car, I said to him, there's something wrong with President Mobutu. What is it? Oh, he's got tertiary syphilis. But he lived for years afterwards as a complete eccentric, running and exploiting that country. So that's what I did when I was 21. And I just can't help thinking of what Mark would have done in that situation. I went on, I did a PhD. I then went to Panama, and I built the very first aerial walkway that was ever built, specifically for studying what happens in rainforest canopies. After that, life became relatively simple. I went into research, published 300 papers, got elected to a couple of national academies, won the Quiche Humanitarian Award of the Year, and then ended up at Penn State, where I ran life sciences for 12 and a half years. But that's my life. What I'm going to talk today about is the fact that we are one family. One of the first things I learned, working with the Darien warriors, working with the Baka as well, is that people vary a lot. This is nothing to do with race. Race is a social construct. This is nothing to do with, differences between people that aren't related to race. It's to do with, there's no biological understanding of race. And that, I think, immediately made me feel very relaxed wherever I am. And just that realization is very important. And isn't it great that we're not the same? I would hate to meet another Peter Hudson that was identical. What I really enjoy is the diversity in people, the diversity in wildlife, and the diversity of that. So, but I am concerned about the planet. And I'm going to talk about the planet, I'm going to talk about our future, and I'm going to try and help stimulate perhaps 0.2% of one person here to think about the issues of the future and perhaps get involved. So I'm going to talk about what I think the fundamental issue is. I'm going to talk about this concept of One Health. I'm going to talk about what Penn State's doing about it. Then I want to talk about changing people's view and how we can use images to do that. And that was the Take 6 project that Dean Johnson referred to, which was the wonderful collection of photographs that we saw outside. And I did indeed go and look at all of them, and I really enjoyed them. I thought they were fabulous, and I learnt something by just looking at your images. So thank you very much for everybody who took part in that. And I'm really happy to talk more about that later. So, if you simplify everything down, what is the fundamental issue facing our future? If you're an environmental scientist, you might say climate change. If you're a social scientist, you might say disparity or intolerance. And you'd be right about those. But I think the fundamental issue underlying all of this is the fact that there are just too many people on this planet. The world population currently is 7.7 billion, and it's approaching 10 billion people. I think that is frightening. I think that is something we should be really... What's really interesting is if you start to look at the demographics. So this is a little video, and this is the year we're looking at here, and this is the relative proportion of people in different parts of the world. And of course, Asia with China and India has dominated the scene for a very long time. But as we're coming up through the 2000s, look at how things are changing. The relative proportion that we're seeing in Africa is increasing at a fantastic rate. Places in Europe are shrinking away. We're seeing a dramatic change in what is actually taking place. And here's that movie running again. You can see it once again in Nigeria. And Nigeria, average family size is like 6 children per mother. In places in Europe, particularly Southern Europe, we're talking about 1.2 per mother. In the meantime, America is staying relatively stable. And this is it. This is the children per woman in 1970. I was trying to get the year that Mark was born in. He was born in 74. But this is the best I could do in 70, and then in 2014. All those reds and oranges mean we're looking at average number of children per mother as sort of 5 to 7. Actually, the maximum number ever was a Russian woman. If I remember correctly, she had 69 children in her life. So they talked about this as fertility rates. That's fertility rate. This is just number of children you actually have. But once again, you can see many of the issues are still sitting in Africa. Most of Europe, Russia, places we're seeing a fall in the number of children per family. Canada, and remarkable changes in South America. USA stays exactly the same. No response there. But this is still the problem, I think, for the future. It's the increase in the population is really going to come about in Africa, and we're going to see some major things. At the same time, a lot of these people are moving into cities. So we're seeing a change. They're moving away from agriculture, they're moving into cities. This is the urban growth per hour into cities in the world. Look at this. Dhaka, 74 people an hour going in, net going into Dhaka. Delhi, 79, Mumbai, 51, Lagos, 85. And you compare that with places like Berlin, which are losing, -1, Tokyo, which is the biggest mega city in the world, and that's -1 as well. So they're about stable, but these other cities are expanding, and expanding very fast rate. These mega cities, this is actually Dubai. It's one of my photographs from Dubai, and Dubai is really a city of the future. It's quite a remarkable city, but it's incredible that this city is just developed in the sandy desert, and you're going, how did you do this? Yeah, this is just incredible, but it is incredible to actually see what's going on there. But these mega cities are places with more than 10 million people. 7 out of 10 of us are going to live in these big cities by 2050. About 5 out of 10 of us live in them now, but by then, most of us are really going to be moving into these cities. So we're going to see a major ecological change take place. One consequence of that is we're going to have some serious issues with energy. We're going to have issues with energy security, to be able to get the power to those places to do things about. We've got issues with food security. How do you get safe food to people's tables? How do you make sure that they're going to be able to eat properly? And that movement of the food, the growth of the food. And we have a lot of revolutions. In science, we're doing fantastic solutions to this. But these are going to be growing issues. Environmental security is going to be another very important problem. And I'm not talking just about the pollution, but pollution has and will continue to be a huge issue in this world. I'm also talking about things like habitat destruction. I love this photo, it's a World Wildlife photo. I just love the fact there's Tarzan swinging through the jungle and boom, they've removed the rainforest because we're losing 15 square kilometres of rainforest every minute. Every minute! That's incredible! Good heavens! That's a huge amount. I can do that. That's 247 times 15, which is, it's still a hell of a lot, isn't it? Acres. I was trying to do that and thought I could do it. Last year, the World Wildlife Fund produced a report telling us that there'd been a 60% decline in the abundance of wildlife since 1970. This is an average. So you take all the species, say how much has it changed by, and then they do the calculation. On average, 60% decline in abundance of all wildlife species. And fragmentation is particularly important. So I took this photograph just before Christmas, and that's Nairobi just behind it. And this is lioness. And if you know anything about lions, they have to disperse over big distances. They have to cover huge distances, not just to get prey, but the babies have to find new prides, they have to break into new areas. Males have to go out there, kill other males to take over a pride. They need large distances. How are these animals going to disperse from the cities and places like Nairobi that they can't get through? So fragmentation is important in this respect. Another paper that came out last year told us that 60% of primates, your closest relatives, face imminent extinction. I think that's an incredible fact. That 60% of primates are going to face extinction. And this means that my granddaughters, I've got 2, I'm pleased to say, and my granddaughters may well live in a world where a lot of primates have gone, elephants have gone, tigers have gone. And I think this is something that we should be worried about, something we should do something about. This is not one of my photos. I really wish it was. It's a fantastic image, isn't it? It captures this whole issue. This is a leopard, of course. This is in the back streets of Mumbai, and it's walking down between the backs of the houses and things, looking for dogs, domestic dogs that it can just grab and eat. Leopards love dogs. Wherever you go, leopards, all they want to do is eat dogs. So this is a photograph capturing that sort of issue and the way they do. But what is happening here is you would never expect to see leopards living in the middle of Mumbai. But there is much greater contact now between us and wildlife, so it's pushing us together. So this habitat destruction, this habitat fragmentation, has increased the contact between humans and wildlife. One of my current grants is looking at bushmeat, looking at what are the infections that are in bushmeat that people are getting exposed to, are there ways we can try and stop that? And one of the diseases we're particularly become interested in is anthrax, for example, because people can pick up anthrax from eating dead animals. People see a dead animal, they'll chop it up and then sell it. Hell, it's protein. I'm not going to leave that protein there. I need more protein, so I'm either going to eat it or sell it. But this means there's an increasing contact between us and wildlife, and because of that, we're getting exposed to new infectious diseases. We estimate that something like humans get 1,405 different infections. We know the majority of those, at least 58%, are derived from wildlife. Those aren't just the recent ones, and HIV is a recent one, Ebola is a recent one, but these are diseases, even measles, which you think of as a human specialist, originated from rinderpest, probably back in the 12th century. Is that close enough, Matt?
Yeah.
What did you say?
It's pretty close.
Pretty close. That's what he works on. So we're seeing this increase in emerging diseases at the moment. We're seeing this more pressure. We're starting to see diseases that humans that we don't think have been exposed to before. So, for example, and what's really worrying me is that it took HIV 56 years to get from chimpanzees to in humans back in the 56 years ago, into humans. And then it took 56 years for it to actually reach the United States, into Los Angeles, to get into the community, the gay community then, and then it spread around the world. It took Ebola virus in 2014, just 4 months for it to get to this country. And we know that antimicrobial resistant bacteria, these bacteria that are resistant to all drugs, they are almost instantaneous. Somebody identifies a problem with a bacteria that's resistant to drugs in India or in Africa, and we find we've got it here already. So this movement of diseases is really important. And this is what I'm calling, this aspect I'm calling the global health security issues. This is the fact that you could be exposed to Ebola, and there is an Ebola. Is the Ebola outbreak still going in Eastern Congo, or is it over?
Still going.
Still going in Eastern Congo, thank you. Gosh, I've got an audience who can help me out here. Still going, but it could get here and it could be spread. Well, we can discuss that, but it could be an issue, shall we say. So how are we going to solve this? I think we need research and we need what I call in-country capability, and that's talking about the countries where many of these diseases are coming. Of course, much of the spread is quite simply because of the way the airlines are set up to move people around the world so very fast. I was in Montana last week. I will be in Bangalore this time next week, and the week after that I will be in Sri Lanka. In the past that was impossible. But that's just how people like me or other people, I'm a great person for pushing disease around, aren't I? So there is these whole global health security issues. I'm going to just talk about those for a little bit. So the second part of my talk is to say, I've talked about the environmental side, I've talked about animals and wildlife, and I've talked about humans. Are these things really connected? Well, at the moment, there's this idea, and it's called One Health. And One Health is basically saying that the future health of humans is dependent on a healthy environment and healthy animals. And if we're going to look after ourselves, we must look after our environment and the wildlife and our livestock that are involved in this. One of the problems I have with this whole idea is it doesn't really have a sound foundation. It doesn't have real sound theory and science. And it's a bit like global peace. We all want it, and it's out there, but even if we all sit around, hug each other and sing Kumbaya, it's not going to happen. So what is it we can do? Where is the science in here? And I'm going to start by telling you a little story, and this is related to some of my research. And I'm going to tell you about a case study that we're working on in Australia, on the eastern coast. This is Vic Rails. Vic Rails was a horsekeeper and lived in just near the airport outside Brisbane in a place called Hendra. And all new viruses are named after the location they're from, so hence the virus I'm going to talk about was the Hendra virus. He came back from a race one, and he's very famous. He had a horse called Vogue, which won many multiple wins, and he was quite a famous horse trainer. He came back from a race one day. He went out into the paddock and in fact met his girlfriend who was coming in from the paddock bringing this horse. It was frothing at the mouth and it was stumbling about. He brought the horse into the stables. He started looking after it and he said, I don't think this horse is going to make it. Go and ring the vet. And the vet was actually having a day off, so it went through to an emergency vet called Peter Reed. And Peter Reed's an old friend of mine, great guy, really. And Peter went straight over there and he couldn't believe, well, he looked at it and he goes, never seen anything like this, I don't know what it is. So they euthanized the horse because it was clearly in pain. They took samples. And Peter describes it as they were basically cutting up the horse and they had a series of buckets and they were putting some tissue in this and some tissue in that, and everybody was getting covered in blood and mess as well. Anyway, from there, went on and Vic subsequently became ill. His horse, his stable hand became ill. Vic died from it, and stable hand was very sick, but his stable hand was the first person to actually recover from this infection. Since then, so as I said, there were 21 horses involved, 14 of them died, including Vic, and his stable hand was 6. Since then, we've had well over 100 horses that we know of that have died. We know it's infected dogs, we know it's infected people. We've had 10 people that we know that are infected. And in epidemiology, we talk about case fatality rate. So that's the likelihood of you dying if you get it. Most diseases we're talking about one, less than one. This is 57% of people die from this disease. That's pretty high. And we had another subsequent outbreak in 2011. So one of the things Peter did was he went out and had meetings. Well, first of all, he went and sampled everything that moved on that farm. So he was killing lizards, he was taking earthworms, he was killing birds, any mammal, any rat, anything he could find on that farm. He sampled. Anything that turned up, he sampled. He sent off to see if there was any new virus, and they all came back negative. The local horse trainers got very upset, and he had to go and talk to them at a meeting. So he had a meeting full of very irate people, and he says, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what it is. We think it's this virus, but we don't know where it's coming from. And somebody just said, so have you sampled the bats? He said, bats? I'm there from dawn to dusk. I never saw any bats. He goes, at night, there's huge numbers of bats go over Vic's land. So he shot some bats, and sure enough, he identified that the bats, the flying foxes, were the source of this infection. We've been studying some of these bats. I'm involved in a group that's been working on this for quite some time. One of the really interesting things that we see happened in these bats is they changed their number of roosts. So March 1998, which was before the 2011 outbreak, we had 10 roosts, 45,000 black flying foxes. The year that we saw the problem take place in 2011, we had 38 roosts and the same number of bats. We just realized that the bats were no longer staying in the main camps, they were just moving out. So what was going on? The number of bats weren't changing. Then we started to realize the bats were actually starving. The bats needed food and they were starting to starve to death. What they need during the winter months is they need to feed on a eucalyptus flower that they can get for nectar, but sometimes this fails. And this fails during bad years, weather years, and it also fails because we've cut it all down. So if you look at the distribution of all feeding habitat in eastern Australia, so Brisbane's here, somewhere down here, isn't it? And now the reliable winter food is really restricted. Is it somewhere down here, Tracy? Yeah, okay, that's good. But now the protected winter habitat is almost extinct. It's almost impossible for bats, particularly in a bad year, to be able to get access to this food. So, to take a long story and summarize it, I think of this as a spillover cascade. So the winter foraging is destroyed by agriculture. El Nino leads to no flowering, so when we have these environmental conditions, there's no flowering. Bats are short of food, they start to use the temporary they start to shed the virus survival is good, the horses are exposed, the horses get sick, and horses and people actually die. This has helped us to try and develop a way forward for understanding the whole process of spillover. One solution, some of my colleagues developed a horse vaccine, but it doesn't work because what happens is the bats go to places they've never been before looking for food, and that's where the infection takes place. So when you go and talk to horse owners who've lost horses or lost loved ones because of the virus, and you say, why didn't you vaccinate your horse? They all just say, because we never saw it as a threat. I've never seen a bat in my life. I've never seen a flying fox until the day we all got the infection. So the horse vaccine isn't working. What we're doing at the moment is we're trying to do some rewilding. And I'm really excited about this. This is not trying to put your finger in the dam by stopping the infection. This is about planting species and putting them back to get the ecology right. So my colleagues and I have identified 5 species that we think we need to put back. One of my colleagues here at Penn State, Nita Bahati, is trying to help us decide where it is we need to put this feed, and in so doing, stop the infection getting to horses and so to people. And I consider this to be a real One Health solution. It is a solution that is bringing the horses, the livestock, the animals, the humans all together, and we can see how to put the environment right to come up with a solution. I think this could help us to explain why Ebola outbreaks take place. What we've seen is not that different from that. We also need to get the theory in here. We need to do the math to underpin this. So working with colleagues at UCLA, we're developing models to try and explain the spillover process and understand it. And that gives us the foundation that the science can build on. And that, to my mind, is really important. So, that's all the science you're going to get. That's enough science, eh? So what I'm talking about is global health. I'm talking about the future of people. I'm talking about health security if you're an American. How do we protect you from these invasive infections? Well, the obvious thing is research capability. Let's help build research capability in low-income countries. Let's go to low-income countries so they can help solve their own problems, and we can help them and advise them to do this. So what about solutions? What is the one solution that is going to solve all of this? I really like to do this. I found this a great thought experiment, to sit back. Thought experiments are really good, really important. Darwin did the whole theory of natural selection in his head by walking on a sand path in Down House. Einstein did all of relativity, playing his violin, looking at a pot of flowers. So you young undergraduates, live inside your head, do experiments, think it through, then think it through again, then polish it again. And that's such an enjoyable and rewarding thing. One of the problems I have is I have to walk when I think. That's why I keep walking up and down all the time. But I have 2 dogs, so I take the dogs for a walk. And then my wife wonders why I don't talk to her when we're going for a walk. And it's because I'm doing thought experiments. Okay, but what is the one solution? What is the one thing we could do? It's so obvious that I think it's painful. But it's so obvious, and it is to educate women in low-income countries to a much higher level. Get those women with PhDs, get those women into university, make sure there's a higher proportion of people. And who better to illustrate that with than Malala herself? What an incredible person she was. She took a bullet under her left eye, shot by a Taliban, because she was standing up for the rights of educating women. And I just think what she's done in this world is truly magnificent. And if you educate women, what happens? You reduce the birth rate, because you reduce the age that women have their first child. The better they're educated, that reduces child mortality, reduces maternal mortality, improves child nutrition, and it reduces mothers. I'm sorry about that. It's a complete mistake. But the really interesting thing is the impact they have on society as well. So they reduce, because they're better educated, they're helping their children, they're helping their families, and they're helping their community. And I'm going to slowly move towards this whole idea of community involvement here. It reduces infectious disease, improves equality, improves economic growth, increased innovation of land and water. Hell, Tom, I just discovered that. That was a great paper, wasn't it? It increases resilience to climate change because they're more attuned to what's happening on the land, and you get better peace and tolerance. And I can't find anything to show that they improve habitat conservation, but I'm going to work on trying to find that. Isn't that such a simple thing to do? You can do that and have such an impact. One of my greatest heroes was Nelson Mandela himself. And I never had the fortune of actually meeting him, although I was in South Africa on the day he was released. I went to South Africa the day he was released, and I sat there in the car just outside Johannesburg, listening to it on the radio in floods of tears. It was one of the most emotional times of my life. What an incredible man he really was. And what he's done to help try and pull Africa and put it to where it's been. And he said, always, education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. And he said, what we need in Africa is an MIT. We need really good class universities that produce PhD students. And I'm very fortunate to be involved in a Mandela University that's trying to do that, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it's all about educating women in Africa and building laboratories, doing things that are really going to change the way it is. Education, it comes in different forms. So a group of us at this university in the Centre for Infectious Disease Dynamics, and a couple of them are in the audience, did a MOOC. And it's a massive open online course, and it was on epidemics. It's about epidemiology. We've had more than 100,000 students involved in that course across the globe. It says every continent, doesn't it, Matt? But I'm not sure we've had anybody from the Antarctic, but maybe we have. But we've had a lot of students. If I was to teach students, and I taught 2 classes a year, with 100 students in each of those classes, it took me 500 years to do that. Isn't that incredible? I'm not saying this is the answer to everything. It is part of the arsenal of how we can help improve education, how we can help sort of reach people, and how we can have a sort of impact. So let's think about Penn State. We do education and research. Isn't this our responsibility? We have fantastic capability, not only in infectious diseases and genomics, but in humanitarian engineering. And we also have an applied research lab here, a UARC, a university-affiliated research centre. Brings in lots of money and they do lots of secret things. The biosecurity is very important for the future. And so maybe by working with them, we can develop pipelines to get money to try and take this. So we've set up this new applied biological research lab, and it's got the most boring title in the world because we want to get money out of the Department of Defense. And I don't care what it's called, as long as it gets lots of money and brings it to Penn State and helps us try and reach some of our solutions. So I told you we've been involved in East Africa at the Nelson Mandela African Institute of Science and Technology. Since being there, we've built 5 new labs there with instrumentations. We've got a BL2 lab for anthrax, and we've had something like, and we've had 3 outbreaks of anthrax last year along the Maasai Steppe, which we were able to stop by having these people, these students involved. We've trained about 20 women scientists, and we had our last summer school just before Christmas, didn't we, Catherine? Catherine is one of the, and I will tell you because Catherine's one of these people, because she's funded by Gates, and she's one of our matched PhD students. So we're matching students from Northern University with students in Africa. So they work on similar projects. They work in parallel together, and they develop friendships, they develop colleagues, and they develop a really healthy approach. And grab Catherine, who's the rather attractive person in the red top sitting over there, and talk to her afterwards about it, because she'll tell you what we're doing out there and what sort of impact. And this is just the start. People say to me, why do you bother? Well, gosh, this is, it's 20 enough. I don't know, I don't care. I'm just going to give it the best shot. I mean, how many of you read more than 5 of my papers, except for you, Matt? And you, Kurt. He's read most of them. But, that's not a big impact. It's all about impact. It's not about, I could come to this university, I can get research grants, I can just do my sort of little thing every day, do the teaching, the university will be pleased to, but I'm not having an impact. We need to have an impact, and I want to have impact. And so that's very important. We're involved, we're trying to eradicate bovine tuberculosis in India. If you think about it for a second, it does sound impossible. How can you take a holy cow and do anything about the infections it's carrying? But we think there's an impending health crisis in India. There's about 500,000 people a year dying from bovine tuberculosis. It's about to get out of hand. So with funding from Bill and Melinda Gates, we're trying to do something about that. And I think we might just do it. I think we might be able to do it. You can't eradicate human TB without eradicating bovine TB. On the health security side, one of the things that worries people is a lot of displaced people for economic reasons, for injustice, for intolerance in the world, are migrating towards countries such as the USA. Many of them come through the Darien Gap, just down here, where there's very heavy mortality. And so we're working in a place called Mateti. I can't say this. I thought it was on there. But anyway, we're working in these locations to try and improve diagnostics, to improve the health of the migrants as they're coming through, and also to improve their health so they're not, and also not carrying diseases towards ourselves. So the fourth point out of my 5 points, how can we change the way people think about the world? What is it that we can do to change people's minds or make people more aware of what's going to happen? I'd like to think that giving a lecture helps. I would like to think that giving this lecture, in the name of Mark Luchinsky, and his potential is going to help influence some of you students. You're the people I'm really wanting to try and influence. So you go away and you think about it. I think the written word is very powerful. The written word is, so the oral word is important, but the written word is also important. But having said that, Nicola Mendelsohn, this lady, Mendelsohn, now, who is one of the Facebook executives, said the written word is dead, the future's video. I'm not going to deny that totally. I don't think the written word is dead, but the future is certainly social media. I am shocked in India about how important the social media is. I mean, I thought it was important here. It's trivial in the USA. These people are professional Instagrammers and Facebookers and all of that. I'm just, wow. And that they're just, that is the way you're going to influence people in the East, is through the social media. And that's going to come, and that's not words, that is videos, that is photography that's going to do it. So think back, if I think back during my life, what are the 2 photographs that I think are some of the most influential photographs that have changed the way people think? Without question, I thought about this photograph first. This is the Napalm Girl. And this was in 1972. And this is Kim Phuc here, and she has just run out of her village that has been napalmed. The village has been burnt down. Her parents have just been burnt to death. She's had her clothes burnt off her very back, and and the skin of much of her body. And she's running towards the camera when this very famous photographer, Nick Ut, took the photograph. That was in 1972. Of course, at that time, people were starting to get worried about the Vietnam War. Within 1 year, America had pulled out. Within 1 year, the war was over as far as America was concerned. And that was because well, not totally, but of course, this photograph had a great influence on people. She's now She had to escape from Vietnam. She actually ended up being a Canadian citizen, and I'm told she doesn't live far over the border from us here, and she is and she's doing extremely well and very successful. Here is another photograph taken by Steve McCurry, a very famous photograph of a Pashtun girl, the Afghan girl, in 1984. And he took this photograph, and she's 12 years old. I'm always stunned by that, aren't you? I mean, she looks like she's 18, 20 to me. She looks, but this defiance in the eyes. And she just walked into this clinic, and Steve was sitting there. She turned and she looked at Steve with that face, and he just took that photograph. He said it was a snap. He never set anything up, or no lighting. He just took that snap. That changed the way things operated. So because of that, things started to change in the Afghan world. Because of that, National Geographic started a fund. This image was used after 9/11 for why there should be more for support for women in Afghanistan and things. So I think this was a very influential photograph. Of course, words can have their effect, but I'm talking about other ways we can do that. So can you use images through social media to change people's view? And that was the Take 6 project. Can you take 6 images that can give me a narrative that I can look at and I can go, and it gives me an insight into something? That's what I think we really should be doing. And well done, guys, because you don't need a camera, a fancy camera approach. You can do this with your iPhone. I'm amazed what these iPhone cameras can do. You don't even need to do it, but you can use images and you can use videos to do something about. So this was a photograph I took just a year ago in Wyoming, and I'm quite interested in this conflict between humans and wildlife in America. And I was driving along and I saw this coyote coming down the road. I slipped out of the car and I lay in the gutter to wait for it to come towards me, and just came trotting on down, on the white line, all the way down. And it was about 4.5 feet when I took this photograph, and I was just hoping that a car would come around the corner. So I was just focused totally on the eyes of this coyote as it was coming. She walked straight towards me, and as she got with a couple of feet away, she just walked around me and went straight on down the white line. And I was hoping to be able to get the car to get it. I've debated whether I should have worked to try and get that car in focus, or just focus on this, and then you just see that in the background. So I think that image shows a story. I've been told it by others that they think it tells a story. So I think that's great. Then I put this together into a collection of photographs about human-wildlife conflicts and wildlife and roads, and where those sort of things come together. And that's a road runner over here. Here's a couple of bison that were disturbed by this car, and they were coming down the road. I'm sitting on a road photographing something, and this bluegrass comes and sits on top of me. And these two are sort of pretty obvious in their own right. I'm also very interested in bats. As you can see, one of the things I'm working on, and I'm trying to do, is a narrative about bats and humans and diseases and horses and things, and trying to get some interesting photographs of bats that make you stop and go, oh, that's interesting. So this is a bat drinking. It's actually in the water. You can actually see the water. This is the reflection of the bat as the bat is flying over the top of the water. This is a bat I took in Ecuador, and it hasn't been to some Californian party and covered in cocaine. This is actually just pollen. It's been all over its nose and places. But before it comes in, here's another one I took actually coming in. This is the Mexican long-tongued bat. Guess why it's called the Mexican long-tongued bat? But these bats come in and they hit these yucca flowers at an incredible rate. And as they come in, they just slurp as they go through. And you can see, you might be able to see, you might not at the back, but here's the pollen sort of coming off. It's all covered in the pollen, and it's just slurping the nectar off as it hits that plant and then moves in. There's another bat photo. But these photographs are sort of taken, this is pretty high-tech sort of thing, so this is high-speed flash. But the flash is down to just a very small time period, and you see the bat coming in. We've got the flower there. This is done with my mate, Dano Grayson. Here's the camera with a really close-up lens, trying to get the bat right in the face, and then we were just using 2 flashes and an infrared trigger to set it up. That is, of course, relatively high-tech, but most of the other stuff is not. And as I said, trying to put these together into a portfolio to describe bat biology. These are bat carers who rear bats and then let them go. I like to see these with people in them, and this is actually Nita Bahati, who I mentioned before, feeding a bat here. And here's another one. This guy, most incredible, one of the greatest field biologists I've ever met, Francois, and he worked for Diane Fossey on the gorillas. I want to do a series of images. And this gorilla here, he actually saw being born. It was one of the oldest gorillas ever known. It's like 48. And Francois, believe it or not, is about 70. And I was sitting up there with him and the gorillas, and this baby gorilla, it wasn't this one. This is the same one you saw earlier, which is Kikilit. And this is Emoja, his mother. That's the same couple I saw earlier. But we're sitting there, and the gorillas are playing, and he calls one of the babies over. He just goes, ooh. This baby gorilla runs over, and of course you can't touch them. You mustn't touch them because we don't want to infect them. And he just comes running up to his foot and goes, and the baby stops, and the mother goes, come back. Just incredible experience. But this guy was just superb. I think it's important to try and get shots from angles you don't really think about. So I took this one in the Masai Mara just before Christmas. We're watching these elephants come. I took a camera and just left it on a small tripod, and then we drove away. And with these modern cameras, I can control the camera from my iPhone. So I'm sitting in the vehicle with my iPhone, watching it come, see it come, and I took the photograph at this stage. In fact, what it did was it swung its trunk, hit the camera, and the camera went soaring. I was with a very good friend of mine, a Maasai guy called Johnny Tembu, and Johnny just looked at me, expecting me to go, and I go, wow. Unfortunately, the camera bounced well. But I really like the fact that it's clearly a mother. You can see the teeth there, and here's this other one, and it's just a different image that you have. And I want to be able to get people to go, elephants, wow. I don't want you to go, image, wow. And here's another one that I did the week before that from a helicopter flying over Lake Magadi. We're flying over, see these elephants in elephant grass, and you can't see elephants in elephant grass. So seeing elephants from above in elephant grass, and they're all walking, so this is the baby, this is the youngest one behind this one, and they're holding each other's tails as they walk through this elephant grass. But it's to try and give a different perspective on it. Of course, excitement's good. The mother had just caught this piglet, this warthog baby, and she was bringing it back to her cubs, and as she got back to the cubs went roaring towards her. And Johnny, bless his cotton socks, he's really good. He put me so I was below ground level, so there was a hill coming down. He drove the vehicle round, he stuck in there behind there, and I could get the photograph from underneath to try and get that excitement of the lioness jumping in the air with it. Got to show your love for wildlife as well. And I think this looks like a heart. If you can't see it, then I'm boss-eyed. But it's a flock of flamingos, of course, in the shape. Once again, that was on that Lake Magadi trip. I really want to do community things. The university was great to do community things, and I love State College. I think State College is amazing. Our hospital is a community hospital. Go to that hospital, and they take anybody basically, and they're doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it for people's health. They're not doing it they're not just doing it to make money. I have to say I love Kish Bank, and my great friend Bill Hayes is here, and he's the president of the Kish Bank, but I love what the Kish Bank as a community bank is doing. They're giving a huge amount of support to the Amish people. The Amish people don't have bank accounts, they don't do things, but they support the Amish community, and they do lots for the Amish community and their health, not because they're making money out of it, but because it's the right thing to do. They give mortgages to single parent mothers to help them buy properties in the area. That's just great. And I think that community approach is so good. And so what I'm trying to do is to develop this community conservation, this community photo, this community science approach. So last month, I started a new magazine, and it's called PT Aware. It's another journal called Paws, Trails Endeavour. This one is PT Aware, and I'm doing everything in it, which isn't too much hard work, except for the layout. Those people at PT, at Paws Trails, do that. And we're trying to get the science across, we're trying to get away with conservation issues are. I'm not aiming this at you, but I would love you to go to this website, pawstrails.com, to sign up, because if you sign up, then we can get more people to get paid for adverts, and get more adverts, we can pay for conservation. It's really aimed at people in the Middle East and the Far East to try and increase awareness there. And this is the first issue that I started, and it's about primates in crisis, and that whole issue about 60%. This week I'm going to write the next issue, and that's about the decline in lion population, and that it's just 10% of what it is, using the science to get together with the images. So this is one of my images of lemurs, and lemurs are in a terrible, terrible state. And it's tragic if we lose lemurs. We're also doing a series of books. I thought we'd do a series. Yes, we're doing a series of books. This is my great friend Gutran Rupka. He was the guy that set me up with the helicopters over Lake Magadi. We're doing a series of books, and we're doing a series of videos, and we're trying to get those videos online to get these conservation and science issues out there in the press. And I call this community photos, because it's not just my photos or Gutch's photos. It's trying to get the whole community of people to give us their photographs, to illustrate those on the web and in books and in videos and things like this. So that's how we're trying to build this, and I really like this community. One of the other things I'm trying to do in the Middle East at the moment is trying to set up this group called Muslim Girls Who Click, which is Muslim girls who take photographs. Muslim girls can't come out and listen to me talk about photographs, can't come out into the desert with me, but I'm trying to get a group of women to be able to take these girls out and teach them about environmental problems by teaching them photography, getting them to use cameras, lending them cameras, and then being able to do things. I should have actually said, Peggy, that I was told I was getting an honorarium for this, giving this lecture, and together with some money that's very kindly come from Kish Bank, I just wanted to tell you that that money is going to go towards educating women in Africa, and particularly at the Nelson Mandela, where we're trying to get more funds to support women out there. So this is another great opportunity, bringing women into this. And Muslim girls, I think, have a problem with being able to do that. But I think we could find a way to do that. So I wanted to say, just finish off now, that we're talking about opportunities that you guys have. We're talking about impacts that you guys can make. We've made a real mess of this planet, in my opinion, and I feel really embarrassed to leave it to you in such a mess. But I want you, the Shrire's Honours students, to go out there and to really have fun while you're doing it, have a big impact while you're doing it, try and change, try and save this world. And I'm just a short, fat little man from Scotland, but I'm trying my best, and I think you guys, because you're much cleverer than me, otherwise we wouldn't have you here, can also have a good thing. And what a tragedy it was losing Mark. But it's given us this opportunity, and thank you very much, Mrs. Luchinsky, for your support of this. I think together we can have a really much bigger impact. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, text those questions. Okay. Why did you build the aerial walkway in Panama? So we want to get up into the rainforest. We want to get up into the canopy to see what was actually taking place, sample what was going on there. And then we realized, and that was pretty hard work. Once we got up to one tree, we said, well, we want to be over in that tree, and we want to be over in that tree. Is what's happening in this tree representative of what we're seeing in the rainforest? So we had to go down and climb the next tree. And then we said, well, instead of going up and down all the time and climbing 120 foot up vertical ladders, let's just build a walkway across. So we talked to the Royal Engineers, which part of the British Army, and said, this is what we want to do. And I met the most amazing general. It was somebody who'd come right up through the army from the bottom right to the top. He was an incredible man. And when I explained it to him, he said, yes, let's do that. That's a really good idea. Let's do that. So he sent out his engineers to help build this for us. And he himself came out to Panama into the Darien. And if you know the world, the Darien is one of the most, can be a very dangerous place. There's at that time, there were lots of drug smugglers going on and things. And of course, at the moment, there are lots of trouble with these people moving through there. And then what they call the coyotes, the people moving them about and things. They'll kill people, they don't know who they are, etc., etc. So it was a dangerous place, but he came out there. When he came out there, I was describing it to him and what they'd done. And he said, okay, I want to go up. And I knew he had a leg that was a stiff leg that he could, I don't know what it was, a shot or something, shot in Northern Ireland, I expect. And he climbed 120 foot up this rope ladder. And he said, Peter, one thing in life you've got to learn is if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. So I'm going to go up there if I expect my men to go up there. He was a great guy. So I think I answered that question. I've lost your passcode. Oh, that's easy. Okay, yes. I've learned that the carrying capacity of the Earth is far greater than 10 billion people. Would the problem lie with the distribution of resources rather than the number of people? What a good question. Darwin always said we were going, Malthus, should I say, was the person who said we were going to outstrip our resources as human population growth exponentially, resources only increase in a linear manner. But one of the things that I really worry about with 10 billion people is that we have done so much damage to the environment, so much impact. And with those statistics of 60% of primates close to extinction, 60% of wildlife being reduced, losing 15 square kilometers of rainforest every minute, that is not good. And that is the basis of what I'm saying. So the number of people, you might be right, the number of people doesn't really matter. But it's the fact we're having this dreadful impact on the environment, it's the thing we really need to do. I'm really astonished at how agriculture has changed in the world. My grandfather was a farmer. My other grandfather was a Methodist minister, but you know, they lived on the poverty line, my grandfather. And yet agricultural change is such that really poverty is really a thing of the past. We talk about poverty, but not real poverty, not level one poverty. There are people in this world, don't get me wrong, but not very many in this country. So if you talk about real poverty, that is going. Agriculture is improving. Science is astonishing. And you know, what we're doing with human health is just incredible, the solutions we have. And it isn't to do with drugs and vaccines, but it's personalised health, the fact that you can look at your genome, I can look at your metabolome, I can actually tell you what the process is going on, which drug or what active interventions we need to help you. So I think science will come up with a lot of solutions to this, but I still worry about the dreadful impact we're having, particularly in Africa, particularly in South America, particularly in Southeast Asia. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, or you want to come back and just shout out. If you're in the room. If you're not in the room, shout out anyway. What is the most remote place you've ever been? Probably pretty close to the North Pole, I guess. A few years ago, I was very close to the North Pole, right in the pack ice there, and I guess there weren't that many people up there. Nobody really stupid. So that may have been. It is I remember that when I was in the DRC, being a real primary rainforest, and right in the middle of nowhere, and I thought we were miles away, miles away from anybody. And I went behind this tree for a pee, and there carved in the back of the tree was Simba. And Simba was a group of rebels. And when we went there, the army said to me as a scientist, you've got to take guns because there are Simba out there. Don't give me a gun, somebody's going to shoot. I don't know what to do with it, but it was I suspect the art of that. And so, but it is. So I was in Alaska a few years ago. I won some award, and I went up to Alaska to collect it. And I was looking at the Brooks Range, and this guy stood up came up next to me as I was looking at the Brooks Range, and he said, "You know, there are places in there we don't think any modern human has ever been." And I thought, that's incredible. That's just in Alaska. What is your advice to students aspiring to work in infectious disease? Well, I think we have, and I would say this, because it's one of the things I do, the best infectious disease group in the world. We're certainly within the top 3, aren't we, Matt? Yeah. Top 2, Matt says. Yeah. We certainly, and that's because we do infectious disease in a different way. We're not necessarily the best at virology or the best at malaria, but we do a combination of things. That's what this university does really well. It's that understanding the epidemiology, understanding the ecology, understanding the mathematics, understanding how viruses get into cells. It's about understanding immunity. So my advice to you is to not specialize too early, but then understanding that your techniques and understanding them, because you'll be able to use those multiple disciplines. And then work with people who are much, much better. Always do. Should biologists be doing more with images, video, and social media to complement their research and present it to the public or students? Have you found that most are willing to do this or resistant to it? So the answer to that is really yes. But I'm at a very fortunate point in my career because I've done most of my important work. And I did most of that early on in my late 20s, in my early 30s. And now I ran the Hudson Institutes for 12.5 years. And I'm just starting my next chapter. And this is my next chapter. That's what I'm telling you about here. So I think, yes, but in places like the Hudson Institutes, we have people who will come along and do the videos for you and will help to try. One of the things I'm really keen on is how we can use the arts more to express the science. And we've got some fabulous people in the Hub who are doing videos, who are looking at art, who are looking at dance and problems with biochemistry and putting the two together. It's just fabulous. And I think that expression through multiple ways is the way to actually do it at the end of the day. Are they willing to do this or are they resistant? Well, if I'm a young professor just appointed, I'm going to tell you, get on with your research. Get yourself into a position where when you come through the room, they go, that is the person who did that. Or that is the person who did that. So focus on, get your research, do rigor and depth in your research. When you get to my age, enjoy yourself in camera, play around. How do you feel about the anti-vaccine movement? Stupid, stupid, stupid. Oh, I never told you why I never wore a tie. So the reason, great question. So when I was, first of all, when I was in the Danakil in 1974, those guys carrying those knives, someone that castrate men, grabbed one of my friends who took his finger and tried to cut his finger off because they wanted to get his ring off his finger. And they couldn't get it off his finger. They tried to pull it off, tried to persuade him. These guys are really very, very intimidating. And they tried to get it, so at that point I said, okay, I'm never going to wear any jewelry. And the other thing was I never wear a tie because when I was with President Mobutu, he came into the town of Kisangani. So if you know what happens in Africa, the Congo River comes up, it turns and then it goes west. And as it turns, it touches a town called Kisangani. And it's one of the towns where there's been huge amounts of conflicts because of the minerals in the soil and things like that. Mobutu went in there, he took everybody in the town that wore a tie and killed them. For no reason whatsoever. He said it was because that wasn't African, and so he killed them. And I only knew about this because we arrived there, landed on the beach, and sitting on the beach, and these people came up and they said, "Hey, do you want to buy a beer?" "Yes, you bet. I'm Brit." So the first thing you want to do is buy a beer. I said, "Yep, I'll buy a beer." I sat down with these kids and started talking, and I was pretty good at French at that stage. And I said, "Well, tell me about Kisangani, tell me about this place, tell me about things." And they said, 3 years ago, Mobutu got all the people and killed them on this beach. And this river was red with their blood. So partly out of respect for that, I get away with it. Unless somebody gives $10 million to the university. I don't know if Rob remembers this, but the Hark family, and of course Rob remembers this, gave the university, Lloyd and Dottie Hark gave the university $40 million, which we used to build the Hark Institute. That day, when Lloyd came to see me, I was wearing 4 ties. So I always say, I'll wear a tie for $10 million. So when you get rich and famous, don't forget Charles College, and if I'm still alive, I'll wear multiple ties. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was just an absolutely wonderful, inspiring presentation. The photographs are just unbelievable. I can send you some pictures of bats. Don't let me forget. I've got lots of pictures of bats. Yeah. But now I'd like to present you with this very beautiful and very heavy.
Good heavens!
The award for your time here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Wow. And there's a vase here.
Oh, look at that! Oh yes. Penn State Trias Honors College 2019 Martin Luchinsky Memorial Lecture, Dr. Peter Hudson. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Mrs. Luchinsky, if you're still there. Thank you so much, Peggy. That's
thank
really.
You so much. This
Look at that, Mary. Wow. God, I'd give a lecture for one of those. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you so much. I also just want to take a moment to thank a few people and thank our university partners in this lecture, the Palmer Art Museum, the Presidential Leadership Academy, and the Schreyer Honors College Student Council. Thank you for your support of this lecture. I'd also want to thank our Schreyer Scholar volunteers and greeters, Elizabeth Weiland, Shahil Patel, and Phelan Dunkelberger. And again, our heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Luchinsky, her late husband Hal, and to the many friends and family of Mark Luchinsky for their generosity and gifts to the Mark Luchinsky Memorial Lecture Endowment. Their contributions help support this special lecture series. Tonight's lecture has been recorded and will be available for viewing online at the website found on the back of your program. And this concludes tonight's program. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.